I'm gonna try sitting down today because I felt that it's not good to talk about peace while you're running around all energetic and excited and that. But I'll let you I'll let you in on a little secret. I had a tough week. It started Monday morning at about 4 a.m. when God woke me up and said, "You know what? You're going to speak on peace." And I said, "Did you have to tell me that now? Couldn't you wait like 3, 4 more hours before you let me know on that?" But spent some time in the Word, got the kids ready for school, had to get everybody to church by 9 o'clock because all the kids had Zoom and classes and busy. And Melissa came in and I said, "Whew," I said, "we're going to talk about peace this week." I said, the last couple weeks have been difficult, they've been hard, and so we'll make it a little easier this week and we'll talk about peace. And then God, doing what God does, decides to make it the least peaceful week I've had in a long, long time. And I spent most of the week saying, "God, how do you expect me, of all people, to talk about peace?" I said, my wife just got a new job. She started it on Monday, so that means I started the 2 new jobs, the teaching kindergarten and teaching 5th grade. I said, I don't know where your peace is. And so really I spent all week seeking God's peace, seeking that rest. Like, God, I know it. And so I dwelled on the verse, and now I finally got the peace, so I forgot the verse. I should have wrote it down. But the one about the peace beyond understanding. And so I said, "Okay, God, I'm going to figure out what this peace beyond understanding is." And then it occurred to me yesterday, as I still couldn't figure it out. Oh, that's what he meant by beyond understanding. It's really, really difficult. But as we were in Mark 7 last week, and so I was reading through Mark 7 some more, and there's the Samaritan woman with the sick daughter, and there's some blind guys, deaf guys. Jesus is healing everybody. Everybody's coming to Jesus to be healed. And what I realized is they were all seeking peace. Like, everybody seeks peace. We seek rest. No matter what is ailing us, what we're struggling with, it's that peace that we search for. I was like, boy, if somebody had asked me the meaning of life, I would say peace. I mean, because when God created us, we had that peace. We talked about that last week. And then the enemy made a vow, and everything changed. And when we read Revelation, we see that that peace will be restored. But in the meantime, I think we're all just here looking for God's rest, looking for God's peace. I know when I was 14 years old, I was depressed, I was suicidal, and I remember having a conversation with my youth pastor at the time, and he said, what do you think happens when you die? And I remember saying, I really hope you just sleep. I said, I just want to sleep forever. That'd be great. And I didn't know it at the time, but he knew it, that I was searching for peace. All the turmoil that I was going through, all the stress, had just overwhelmed me, to the point where I was suicidal. And that's when we see people take their own lives, they're seeking that peace, that rest, that moment of ending the pain that we felt for years and years and years. Because we weren't created for it. We weren't created to to feel all this pain. So as I was reading this week, I came up to this verse in Matthew 11:28. And it says, "Then Jesus said, 'Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest.'" It's a wonderful verse. It's one of those verses that everybody knows. It's ones that we put on our wall at home. You know, we have signs and decorations. It's a wonderful verse. Because all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, that's all. That's all of us, aren't we? Because we're not in the position that we were created for. God created us to be in relationship with him, to be in peace with him, and we have struggled to be there. It's been hard. We weren't meant to be in this world. We are just passing through. We are not citizens of this world, but we are citizens of heaven. And so in the meantime, there are trials, there's pain, there's sickness, there's weakness that we all experience. And so Jesus says, "Come to me. Come to me, and I will give you rest." But I was thinking about this, and when I read this verse, I get kind of the old picture of the shaman on top of a mountain where you got like 50,000 billion steps you got to climb up, and you got to go seek this wise man, and he'll answer your questions, and he'll give you the peace. And so I imagine that we think we're okay. I gotta drudge through. I gotta power up these steps, and eventually I will get to Jesus, and he will take it all away. But then I was thinking about it, and I think we all live life like it's more like a rest stop on a highway. Like we got our station wagon filled to the brim. The screaming kids are in the back. You know, we missed the last 6 oil changes, so it's burning oil. And we're just driving down the highway. One of our tires is mostly flat. And we're just drudging through until we can get to the next rest stop. And we pull over to Jesus, and we go to the bathroom, and we read the maps, and we get a new drink from the cooler, and then we get back into our station wagon that's filled to the brim with the junk in our lives that we continue, and we get back on the road. And we drive down the road for another 400 miles until we can make the next pit stop. That's kind of like if you're going to church on Sunday for Jesus, and then you pull back out the rest of the week. You drive. You got all your junk, all your stuff with you. The kids are still screaming in the back, unless you leave them. I tried that. Don't do it. No, I didn't try. But you know what they say? They say, well, God's in control, right? So we just get back in the car and we drive and we drive. But let me tell you something. God's not in control. Not in the way that we always say it is. We think we just have to continue drudging down this same road, continue drudging with this because this is where God has me. And if he didn't want me here, he would just take it away, right? Sometimes when people say, well, God's in control, they say, well, look at Job. God gave Job over to Satan. I go, so I was reading Job, and I was like, that's not what happened. I said, so God's up in heaven, and Satan and the angels who were cast out, they come to his presence. And the first question God asks him is, oh, so where have you guys been? God knows where they've been. He's the one who banished them. And so that's just God's funny little way of poking fun. Oh, Satan, where have you been? Oh, yeah, you're down there now, aren't you? Because you said that you were going to be me. You said you could do what I do better. And then God mentions Job. He says, have you seen my servant Job? I mean, he's human. But look he worships me. Oh, he's got such a heart. He sacrifices offerings. He worships me all the time. Kind of as a way to say to Satan, hey, you know what? Remember, the job I hired you to do was to worship me? And guess who took your position? This guy. This Job. He's doing what you couldn't do. And he does it because he wants to, not because he has to. And God's just kind of poking fun at him. And say, look at Job. And so Satan takes over and says, well, watch this. Because Satan knows he's in control of this world. He can do what he wants within reason. And so bad things start happening to Job. He loses his family, he loses his farm, his oxen, everything that could go wrong goes wrong. And it's all for the reason that Satan wants to get Job so frustrated with all the pain and the burdens that he gets mad at God. That's why he does it. And all of Job's friends come and say, you should just curse God. You should just curse him. You should become angry with him. And Job's, no. Well, you should tell us what you did wrong. And Job says, no. But when I look at the weary people and I look at the heavy burdens that we all carry, it makes me feel like we're all Jobs. Like God is trying, or like it's not God, it's Satan who's trying to wear us down to the point that we get mad and curse God. Because that's why we say, oh, well, God's in control. Well, then we start blaming God every time something happens. When we lose a brother, or when we lose a job, when COVID hits, we start blaming God. But it's not God that's causing these burdens. It's not God that is weighing us down. Jesus is saying, come to me. I will give you that rest. And he goes into verse 29. And he says, take my yoke upon you. Take my yoke upon. Think about this. When we read verse 28, and it's so beautiful, and we post it all over our walls and our Facebook pages, and we talk about the weary and burden, and Jesus will give you the rest that we need. I think we like to skip this verse. Because how backwards does it sound that, oh, I'm burdened, I'm carrying the station wagon full of stuff, and Jesus says, well, I got one more thing to add to it. Let's see if there's room in the back. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Jesus doesn't have to be a rest stop that we visit once a week on Sunday. He says, let me teach you. He says, I have a yoke for you. Let me give that to you. For me, I flew out here in December, and you guys voted me your new pastor. And everything seemed wonderful. And then 2020 started. And I think about that, and it's like, if God had told me, hey, I have this yoke for you, okay? I want you to move 2,000 miles. I want you to bring your family. Have you ever dealt with a pandemic before? No. All right, well, you ever run a church that's currently has their doors closed? Well, no. All right, well, here's my yoke for you, Pastor Andrew. I'm calling you to Washington. I want you to move. And when you get there, everything's going to go wrong. And people are going to hate you because you're not wearing a mask. People are going to hate you because you're not Pastor John. People are going to hate you for all these reasons. And people are going to walk away, and people are going to deal with their own things, and you're going to have to bear it. That's the yoke I have for you. Would you still want it? I told Melissa, I felt like he sugarcoated it a little bit. Like he did the bait and switch. I bought the lemon at the used car lot, Not that you guys are lemons, but we're making lemonade, but it's like he showed me one thing, and then I got here. It was different. But see, in the Bible, that's the way God always works. I think of Joseph from the Old Testament, from Genesis, Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, that he had this dream that people were going to bow down to him, and he was going to be powerful, and he was going to be wonderful. And God's showing him, this is your yoke I have for you. And Joseph's like, yes. And then his brothers beat him up, throw him in a well, sell him into slavery. He works in Potiphar's house, and then he gets arrested, thrown in jail. All right, Joseph, let me show you this yoke and tell me if you still want to sign up for it. I mean, I know the vision God has for this place, and we'll get there. But look at this verse. Take my yoke upon you, and let me teach you. Let me teach you. It's these seasons that God is teaching us. As we're wishing we could be at the restful, peaceful place, God says, we're going to get there. He says, I want to grow you, and I want to love you, and it's going to be difficult, but I got it for you. I showed you the vision of how it's going to look, but the process of getting there is going to be much harder than you think. But instead of just taking away our burdens, because God knows when we fill up on burdens, we fill up on burdens. And God could take them all away, and we'd walk out and we'd fill our packs again with more burdens and have to climb that mountain again. He says, let me teach you. Let me teach you about the rest. And this is a season of teaching as I've never experienced. Well, actually, this is the third time I've moved across the country. And every time I've done that, I've walked into a season of teaching. I hope I can stay here and not go through that again. But see, that's the thing is like, sometimes we get so caught up in worrying about the future and how it's going to look and what we're going to do. And we let fear and anxiety and worry just fill our hearts. But we're not even in the moment that we need the rest, you know? I was at Rite Aid yesterday. My wife had sent me to get a thermometer so she could take her temperature. She wouldn't use the meat thermometer we already had. So I go and I wander around and I find the thermometer section. There's only one left, and it's the most expensive one. Well, guys, what do we do? You know, she sent us to get it. If we don't come back, then she's going to send us to another store and another store. And so I purchased it, and I went up, and I went through the self-checkout. And then I was going to walk out, and I realized it had that little spider safety security device on it. And so I had to bring it to the lady, and I said, you know, can you remove this so I can leave with it? And she says, oh, yeah. And she tries and can't get it off, and another employee tries and can't get it off, and another employee tries and can't get it off. And so I'm waiting, and she's like, I got to go to the back, and I think we can get it off in the back. And so she's gone. This is taken about 10 whole minutes of just waiting around after I've purchased it. And then, of course, as I'm waiting, I see behind the counter they have more, and they're cheaper than the one I bought. And I thought, would it be bad to just return it as soon as she gets back after spending 10 minutes opening? But I didn't do that because I didn't. But I started thinking about it. I said, you know, all these things are things that would normally trigger me and frustrate me and get my blood boiling. But in that moment, I felt peace. Like in the moment I needed it, God showed up with it. I was like, oh yeah. I said, sometimes we worry. My wife came home from work on Thursday in tears, like she does every year at some point. And she says, they don't have a computer for me. They don't have my logins. I can't do my work. I can't do it. And I told her, I said, well, you know, when the time comes that piece of work needs to be done, God will provide. And so after spending the whole night being sad and frustrated, she went to work on Friday, and sure enough, there were her login. She still didn't have a computer, but another teacher said, borrow mine. And she was able, and God just kept showing up with all those things she was worried about. And he provided for them when it was needed. And so, like, I think sometimes that's our struggle, is we want peace at the wrong time. See, sometimes we think, well, here's the thing. If I go ahead and I do A, B, C, and D, then I'm going to have some time off. I can have peace then, right? If you check off all your stuff on your list, that's what the world will tell you, then you'll have peace. Well, by the time we get, D and E done, F, G, and H are already past due. It's chasing that proverbial carrot, and we do that. We get so caught up in, okay, well, if I can just take care of all this stuff, I'll get to rest eventually, right? But it never seems to be that way. Because we need to learn to rest in the moment. Instead of just waiting for the next rest stop, we need to learn how to invite Jesus into the car with us to be able to sit there with us and give us peace as we go about our day in this moment, instead of worrying about the next moments and what's to come. I was driving home from refit yesterday, and I had stayed and I was doing some work, and I was still at the point I was just so confused about peace. Where's that peace that surpasses understanding? And he told me I was going to preach on peace, and I still couldn't figure it out. And then he gave me a verse, and it all clicked, and I started crying as I was driving. James 1:2. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. See, we forget we don't live in a vacuum, and that you can't just throw all the junk away without replacing it with something. Like if you have a glass of water and you pour out the water, the glass isn't empty, it's now filled with air instead of water. I realized I can't find peace as in the absence of anything. My rest is not the absence of anything, it's found in the joy. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. We have to take the junk out of our car and replace it with Jesus, replace it with joy. I mean, James says those fiery trials, you're going to be driving down that highway and everything's going to go wrong and and that's when you need the peace, not when you get to the next rest stop. But he says, consider it pure joy. These seasons of teaching where we're learning and we're growing and we're going to get to where we need to be eventually. But right now we got to deal with these trials. He's building us up for the perseverance. Because when the time has come, the trials are going to increase. I mean, if you think the enemy's mad at what we're doing now, stay with us. Because we're going to tick him off even more. And he's going to attack us, and we're going to stand strong in what we do. Pure joy. When you're dealing with the weary. I mean, that's the thing. The yoke that Jesus gives us is pure joy. I don't like that it says it's easy to bear. This verse is difficult for me because I think a lot of us, when we see the word easy and Christianity together, it makes it think, oh, there's going to be no trials. God's in control. He's going to take it all. We're not going to have to do anything. But Jesus is saying, no, I will teach you. And I have a purpose for each one of you. There is a yoke that I have specially crafted for you. But where you are and where you're going to be, you're going to have to bear it. And I'll be with you. I'll be in the car with you. I'll hold the hand. I might even take the wheel if Carrie Underwood lets him. I don't know. But it's really it's not about peace. It's about joy. We find peace, we find rest when we are experiencing the joy of Christ. aren't we? We find healing. Our burdens are taken when we are able to find joy. I mean, because we can worry about it all we want, and we can be anxious about it, but that doesn't add a day onto our life. But right now, in this moment, where we're at, we have so many reasons to experience joy. And so